Campfire Classics is a classic literature podcast. However, your hosts will occasionally use not-so-classy language and immature humor to describe very mature situations. As such, listener discretion is advised. Hi, I'm Ken Sandberg.
And I'm Heather Michelle Lawler.
Welcome to Campfire Classics, where we try to read those books that look really good on your shelf.
Welcome to the lusty month of May.
It's May, the lusty month of May.
Yes, I just made it newer and sexier.
It's already a pretty sexy song.
As much as sexy as Lerner and Lowe can be.
May. The time when lots of wicked thoughts merrily appear.
I mean, it is when people get Twitter-pated, as Bambi put it, which was the first time I learned about what horny meant. Thanks, Disney. What a cute word for I want to fuck.
Disney, ruining your childhood since 1940.
Yeah. There is no sarcasm with that. Most girls are pretty scarred by, we're just going to have a prince come rescue us, right? And then we also learned that everybody's mother dies.
Yeah. Once it was no longer just like Mickey Mouse and his buddies, once they started doing other stuff, it was sort of like, wow, this is fucked up.
Well,
reality's a mess.
To be fair, they took fairy tales that are inherently incredibly fucked up and just kind of slightly altered them. But that did not mean they weren't still very fucked up.
No, because what they did is they took these fucked up fairy tales and then they removed the part that was the moral.
Well, they took out the lesson.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
They turned them into cute little children's stories, except that
and everyone lived happily ever after.
All of the fucked up things that the characters did that got them punished in the first place stuck around, except now we're rewarding it.
And we only punish the evil witch. Who, much like going back and watching Rent, sometimes the evil witch was right. Sometimes Benny was right in Rent.
Yeah.
You knew. So that is something I think, we may have talked about on this podcast before. I don't know. But you realize you're getting older when you go back and listen to or see the show Rent. All of our listeners will understand this. I have no doubt. And you start to go, Benny had a really good offer on the table. And they're stupid as fuck.
I was having this conversation with some of the guys in the dressing room last week. We were talking about the show Rent. Mm-hmm. And, I grew up listening to it. Absolutely. Many people of most theater kids of our generation did.
It was my favorite fucking show. I mean, I don't exaggerate when I say I would sit in the parking lot of my high school with my friend and sing the entire show.
Yeah.
We loved it so much.
No, it was pivotal. And I will say that there are things about it that are still great. Mm-hmm. The music is still phenomenal.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And the storytelling is interesting and the characters are good and all that. But we were having this conversation in the dressing room and it was like, it's weird to grow up and listen to it and realize that Benny's kind of the good guy. And the other guy, it's like, y'all, he's not even charging you astronomical rent, and he's giving you a way out of paying it entirely. Just fucking act like adults.
Do you know what any artist would do? All you had to do was call off that fucking weird-ass protest led by Maureen, who no one seems to like anyway.
Yo, if it came down to it, I would absolutely call up my ex and convince her of them
not to protest.
And convince any of them to not protest in exchange for
free rent.
For free rent and recording studio space?
They had a huge fucking loft in the Village.
Jesus.
For free. And they didn't do anything. Yeah. I
would even be willing to try to do it nicely in exchange for on paper guarantee that I can stay and work in this studio workspace for free. Yeah.
For a undisclosed, like a legitimate, who knows how much time. It sounded like it was just open-ended because Benny owned the building.
Yeah.
I was like, these people are stupid. I go back and I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
So Benny's
It's-
the good guy. Maybe the witches are the good people in the end.
It's a little bit. I mean, it's a little bit the same way I feel about Into the Woods.
Oh, absolutely.
Like
but
the
that's purposeful.
the witch and the giant, and
that's purposeful.
It's a little bit the same way.
Sometimes brilliant.
Here's the controversial one, and it's mostly because of the only version I've ever seen of it. It's a little bit the same way I feel about Hair. The one time I saw Hair, it was a production where I found myself siding with the parents. And I'm like, listen, you whiny little kids, I get it. Don't go to war if you don't want to. But like...
Yeah, that one is historically accurate, though.
Yeah.
So I can't really side with that because I know people that were like getting drafted, like, and they were burning their draft. Like, like that was a pointless war. I wouldn't have wanted to go over there either.
No, neither would I. I get it. I would have run away and moved in with family in Canada, or I don't know, shot off my pinky toe or something.
I mean, they were just kids being kids. I did some stupid shit in my 20s, but at least that one's historically accurate.
But the one production I saw,
the poor parents. I mean, the parents were worried about their kids.
Yeah.
I mean, but parents do that anyway. Even if you're like a good kid who doesn't do acid in a garage with your flower power friends.
Wait. Is not doing acid in the garage an option? I thought we were all required to do that. Like, I thought that was...
Oh, maybe in Minnesota. I don't know how things work.
Must be a Minnesota thing. Yeah. Must be a Minnesota thing.
I mean, I waited till way after my high school and 20s to do acid for the first time.
Oh, yeah. No,
I waited till I was a real adult to, see the world in a whole new light.
No, everyone I knew was just doing acid in the garage and setting shit on fire. It was just, it's what we did. Like, it was like, hey guys, it's Tuesday. What you want to do? You want to go?
Ken is exaggerating.
You want to go drop acid in the garage and set shit on fire?
Yeah, this coming from the guy who said he had his first sip of alcohol when he moved to New York.
That's not true. I'd had communion wine before then.
That does not count. That is Jesus's blood.
Hang on. Wait. No, my mom accidentally... Hi, Mom. Sorry. My mom accidentally got me tanked on wine coolers when I was 2.
That's funny as fuck, though. My parents used to rub whiskey on my gums, so I'm sure I was tanked quite a few times when I was teething. So, yeah. What are you going to do? But long story short, it's May, and sometimes witches are right.
Yeah. Witches can be right.
Yeah.
Giants can be good.
Yes.
Landlords
usually suck.
Are still mostly douchey, but, they're people.
They are people, unless you have an alien landlord, and then that's kind of cool.
Do you think our landlord's an alien?
No. I have had landlords in the past that I think are aliens. I have actually, no, you know what? I've never met our landlord. You have.
Which is freaking bonkers to me.
I don't know why I've never met him. We've been here almost 2 years.
What are you doing tomorrow? We're just going to go knock on the door and be like, hey.
Hi, I'm...
We've been here for almost 2 years. It's about time y'all met.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. I kind of like it this way. It's just like this anonymous person. So if I get pissed off and I send an email, there's no face. It's like Facebook.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like when I hate our upstairs neighbors and I send him a message going, I hate these people. It's just, it's anonymous.
Is it okay if we just explode the building? I know it'll probably take out our neighbors too, but I think it's worth it.
Yeah. Speaking of fire, did you say blow up the apartment? Set the apartment on fire? Is that what you said?
I said explode the building.
Oh.
Or something.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
I don't know.
I don't listen to what I say. I'm not going to listen to what I've said until
you have to edit this?
Until I edit this. And then I'll go, what the fuck was I? Oh, it's all that acid I dropped in the garage.
Oh, yeah, that huge garage we have in this apartment.
No, all that acid I dropped in the garage back in the 90s. It's coming back to me now.
Got it. It's all coming back. It's all coming back to me now.
Flashbacks 30 years later.
Yeah. Well, they say that happens if you drop acid too many times. I stopped at 2 for that purpose.
But no, speaking of setting things on fire, welcome to Campfire Classics.
Hi.
Where, we take short stories that we have found.
Oh, I get what you did because we're Campfire Classics Fire.
Fire, yeah.
Hey.
Yeah,
Sorry,
that was very direct wordplay.
I loved it.
We read stories that we found in the public domain. We read them sight unseen. We've never read them before. Most of the time, we haven't researched them before. Sometimes we only barely have the title.
Yeah.
There have definitely been stories that I selected and realized that I was pronouncing the title wrong. Anyway, we read them to you, as I said, sight unseen, and along the way, we tell stupid jokes. We talk about drug culture, apparently.
Penises.
And we make ridiculous penis jokes.
Yeah.
That pretty much sums up the show. Occasionally, we also get on political soapboxes or cultural sort of tirades and whine about things, but mostly it's the stories and the penis jokes. This week, Heather has selected a story for me to read. I'm really excited to hear what it is, but before we get there, she's done a little bit of research and found some fun facts to get the ball rolling. So take it away, Eric, the orchestra leader.
This is a new author today.
Yay!
I know absolutely zero about the story, and until I did this little bit of research, zero about this author. So we are going to be reading Lucas Malet today, or Lucas Malet. I don't know.
Probably Malet, although I like Mallet.
Wait for it.
Is he a hammerhead shark?
She was using a pseudonym. There you go.
Is she a hammerhead shark?
She might be. I don't know.
Did she use a pseudonym because she was like, fuck, I have to have a human name?
I think she used a pseudonym because she was a writer in the Victorian era of England.
Yeah,
and wanted to not just write about, like, I love things, you know, that kind of thing.
Flowers and dresses.
Yes. So, Lucas Malet. We'll say Malet.
Will come.
We'll say Malet. That's it. Going back to that Disney thing. There
if
it
you
is.
do it right, he will.
If he does it right, he will.
Let's be fair. He doesn't have to do, nobody has to do very much.
No, for him. For her, maybe. Yeah. Anyway, moving on. Before we go down that spiral, we're so early in the episode. So Lucas Malet, we will call her, was the pseudonym of Mary St. Ledger Kingsley.
Okay.
She was born June 4th, 1852. So she was known for, or I'm going to refer to her as she because she is a she, had novels that were detailed, sensitive investigations of psychology, of masochism, perverse desires, and unconventional gender roles.
So this is going to be a sexy ass episode.
As I told you, lusty month of May, I guess. So Kingsley...
It might be a sexy ass episode.
It might be about butts. We'll find out. The next word I'm about to say is rectory, so that's pretty funny. Couldn't set that up better. She was born at the rectory of Evansley, Hampshire.
Usually rectory stuff doesn't lead to birth, but...
Sometimes you miss, I guess. Oopsie.
Oops, right hole?
Oops. She was the youngest daughter of Reverend Charles Kingsley, who was also an author, quite renowned author, and his wife, Frances Eliza Grenfell, and she was not the youngest daughter. She was the third of 4 children. So probably the youngest daughter, but anyway. Right. That's how genders work in history.
Gender's confusing. Don't worry about it.
It really is. Her paternal uncles, Henry Kingsley and George Kingsley, were also both writers. So her father and 2 of her uncles were established writers in England.
Kingsley sounds like a writer's name.
It really does. Kingsley was educated at home and studied art with some pretty famous people, but clearly wanted to be a writer. But because it was middle of the 1800s England, in 1876, she was set up and married Reverend William Harrison, who was a colleague of her father's.
Cute.
His name was Minor Canon of Westminster, which is like the dumbest name I've ever heard. And his
name was Minor Canon?
Yeah.
That's just setting you up for disappointment.
Right? And trust me, it was because...
I mean, better than Major Canon.
I guess Major Cannon sounds at least like he might be good at it.
Yeah, but like
know that guy's a douchebag.
You're setting a high bar.
It's also a douchebag name. He's like a Major Cannon. Minor Cannon just sounds like he's kind of a sad guy.
Yeah.
But Mr. Minor Cannon was the priest in ordinary to the Queen. So, I mean, he had a good job, but he was also old. So, she was kind of. There is a question if what she was told to give up or chose to give up her artistic aspirations during the marriage. But the marriage was childless and very unhappy, so they separated. And after the separation, Malet, or Mary, we'll call her Mary Malet, because that's a mashup of both.
Mary Malet.
Mary Malet embarked on an independent writing career and formed her pen name by combining two little-known family names. So she still used names, but she didn't use Kingsley.
Right.
And Lucas was probably, her grandpa's name or something. So her first novel came out just 6 years after she was first married. So that marriage didn't last very long.
No, especially by the standards of the day.
Yeah. So that was her first novel, was called Mrs. Lorimer, A Sketch in Black and White, and was published in 1882. It got a lot of critical attention and praise. And then the second novel, Colonel Enderby's Wife, was published in 1885. And that was a fictionalized telling of her brief failed marriage. So she just went there. She's like, fuck it. But, of course, she's writing as a man, so no one knows there's a woman talking about her own marriage. 5 years after her husband died, so he was clearly much older, she was actually...
Or, bear with me, she was tired of the disappointing Minor Cannon and just decided to get rid of him.
That's true, because they couldn't technically divorce.
Yeah.
So she was just separated. So when he finally died, she actually converted to Catholicism, because that's so much better than the Church of England. At the time, maybe it was. I don't know. But then she made some choices that I'm like, Catholicism? Was that what you wanted? Because Mary Malet lived most of her life on the continent of England with the singer Gabrielle Vallings. Gabrielle was much younger than Malet. I believe they met when she was about 16, different time, or 15, was the author's cousin, companion, and to get it even weirder, adopted daughter. So we got a little bit of a, Woody Allen situation going on here. But she is actually her cousin. So, yeah, at least Woody Allen's daughter is fully adopted and not related. Anyway, it's still gross.
Still gross, but realistically, the biggest issue with cousins is
reproduction.
Inbreeding,
that's true, and they
which
can't,
is not going to be an issue here.
Women.
So
and they
less creepy.
They were, quote, companions. No one they're. People love to talk. Maybe they were just really close friends and cousins and mother and daughter. I don't know. Whatever. They traveled together.
I guarantee there is a porn about them.
If there's not, I think we found our next project. Not between you and me, but we can direct. You can write it. I'll direct it. It'll be great. Zach and Mary make a porno. We can do Heather and Ken make a porno. Fuck this.
This is literary pornography.
Mm-hmm. You know there is a huge audience out there for that. Come on. People watch Bridgerton for a reason.
Hey, campers. When you write in this week to 5050artsproduction@gmail.com or message us on any of the social media looking for Campfire Classics Podcast, or shoot us a text, as some of our listeners do.
Yes, we actually get a lot of texts.
The ones who actually just know us personally.
Yeah.
Go ahead and let us know if you would be interested in watching a porn written and directed by us about Mary.
Well, this would
what's
clearly
her
be
name?
lesbian porn. So,
And
Gabrielle.
And Gabrielle, Mary and Gabrielle. It would be literary. It would be historical. It would be held to high artistic standards.
It'd also be cousins.
There are a lot of kinks going on in
Gabrielle
this.
Valens is also a classically trained soprano opera singer. So
it's a musical, too.
Yes.
It is a musical porn.
About literature.
About mother-daughter cousins.
In the Victorian era of England.
It's a period piece.
But not that kind of period piece. Some people are into that, too.
Some people might be into that, too.
God damn. And if you're still listening, thank you.
If you're still listening, you have much more optimism for where this episode's going to go than I do.
Woo! All right. Everyone take a drink and moving forward.
Done.
So, the two of them traveled abroad frequently, and that included spending significant time in France. Malet spent a lot of the second part of her life in France, where she was part of high literary circles. She wrote frequently during this time about just from economic necessity, because she was very critically successful, but not like financially successful. It was one of those, like, people loved her work and she put out a lot of work, but she just didn't make a lot of money. So despite this, she wrote at least 17 novels, 2 books of short fiction, and many countless short stories, literary essays, and poems. She actually even finished one of her father's novels. She said her father, niece, and cousin were all writers. So that was, niece. Oh, then one of her uncles was using a pen name too, when I read earlier. So her father, niece, and cousin were all writers. But anyway, of those, the Kingsleys, she was the least studied of them, like, throughout history, even though she most likely wrote the most and was the most critically successful. No one, like, studied her after her death. Like,
okay, I was going to say, when you say least studied, do you mean the fewest people know about her, or least studied as in she was the least educated?
Least studied as in people didn't, like, once she died, she kind of, like, fell
Disappeared.
away. Whereas the other 3 Kingsleys have a lot of literary students who have done, autobiographies, have done biographies on them, have done studies of their work. She only has 1 biography written about her work. Much like Betsy Ross.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it,
Yeah, right?
is to write a biography based on the porn, based on her life.
Yeah. Henry James was a huge admirer of Malet's writing,
Okay.
and a very close personal friend. One of her most successful novels was The Gateless Barrier in 1900. That was a full-length ghost story.
Cool.
She was also heavily involved with the aesthetic movement, which explored more transgressive themes such as adultery and sadism. Or sadism.
Sadism,
Yeah,
yeah.
sadism. Her later novels, such as The Survivors in 1923, are proto-modernist and explore a lot of things that were well ahead of their time. E.F. Benson, who we have read on here often, acknowledges his debt to her critical advice in his memoir.
Oh, so not just like passingly influenced, but like directly.
Like, was a friend and she helped him with his writing. At the height of her popularity, she was compared favorably to Thomas Hardy. Henry James, with sales rivaling. God, I'm not reading today. And with sales rivaling Rudyard Kipling.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So that gives you some, like, weight of what she,
that dude sold a lot of books.
He sure fucking did, and we still read them today, a lot of those stories. So
we've read one of them on this podcast.
Yes, exactly. Despite all of this, she died in poverty on October 27th, 1931. Now, her last novel, The Private Life of Mr. Justice Scheme, was completed after the author's death by her companion and was published in August of 1932. A lot of people attribute her decline in reputation because of what she was writing about in a Victorian society. She was writing about, sex and gender roles and evolving modernist style and gender politics. And so she was not met well as she was passing on with the Victorian era. So
Sure. Yeah. She was Victorian and Edwardian, and neither of those eras are particularly well known for their
being groundbreaking
for their progressive
thoughts. So that's I think she fell away near the end, but at the time she was widely regarded as one of the premier writers of fiction in the English-speaking world at the height of her career. But today she is barely read or studied, and we're going to fucking change that right now because...
Well, shit, Mary.
Let's do this, Mary. You are going to be reading The Birth of a Masterpiece by Lucas Malet or Mary St. Ledger Kingsley. Let's start the fire.
The Birth of a Masterpiece by Lucas Malet.
We'll figure out how that's actually pronounced at some point. Or we won't.
Or we won't. That's probably the last time we're going to have to say it.
Probably is.
Looking back on it from this distance of time, it began in the early and ended in the middle 80s. I see the charm of ingenious youth stamped on the episode, the touching glamour of limitless faith and expectation.
Mid-80s, so we're like, Madonna, Bowie. Yeah. Oh, 1880s. So Madonna, David Bowie, they're vampires.
Yeah. We were, the whole little band of us, so deliciously self-sufficient, so magnificently critical of established reputations in contemporary letters and art. We sniffed and snorted, noses in air, at popular idols, while ourselves weighted down with a cargo of guileless enthusiasm, only asking opportunity to dump itself at an idol's feet. We ached to burn incense before the altar of some divinity, but it must be a divinity of our own discovering, our own choosing.
Teenagers.
We scorned to acclaim ready-made, second-hand goods. Then we encountered Pogson. Heber Pogson.
That's an unfortunate name.
Our fate... and even more, perhaps his fate, was henceforth sealed.
Ooh, that's a fun opening paragraph.
That's a good one.
So it's some snooty, young artists who,
Fucking
poo-poo
teenagers.
anything, they're like, ooh, the bourgeois, blah, blah, doo-doo-doo. No, we don't like that person. They're too cool. We don't follow that religion because they're all established. It's teenagers.
Yeah. He was a large, sleek, pink creature, slow and rare of movement, from much sitting, bulky, not to say squashy in figure, mild-eyed, slyly jovial, and for no other word to my mind so closely fits his attitude, resigned. A positive glutton of books, he read as instinctively, almost as unconsciously as other men breathe.
All I can see is, what's the pink guy in Smash Brothers?
Jigglypoof?
He was a large pink creature, slow and bulky and squashy and...
Slyly jovial.
Slyly jovial. It's
Jigglypuff.
Jigglypuff.
Careful, he's going to swallow you.
Promise. It is the lusty month of May.
Whoa!
Hey!
But he not only absorbed...
It's Jigglypuff!
But he not only absorbed, he gave forth, and that copiously, with taste, with discrimination, now and again with startlingly eloquent flights and witty sallies.
Flights? He flies around? I mean, I'm just saying.
His memory was prodigious. The variety and vivacity of his conversation, the immense range of subjects he brilliantly labored when in the vein, remained with me as simply marvelous. With us, he mostly was in the vein. And vanity apart, we must have composed a delightful audience, generously censor-swinging. No man of even average feeling but would be moved by such fresh, such spontaneous admiration. Thus, if our divinity melodiously piped, we did very radiantly dance to his piping.
I dance to Jigglypuff's piping all the time. He makes a funny noise, doesn't he? He's like... Now, to be fair, I was usually kind of high when I played Super Smash Brothers. But I liked playing with Jigglypuff because he does. He, like, swallows people. He's like... And then he's like... So, I mean, that was a pretty good description. I didn't know Jigglypuff's real name was Huber Pogson.
Heber.
Heber Pogson. Either way,
Heber
very
Pogson.
Unfortunate. I know why he switched his name.
Yeah. Yes, because Jigglypuff is a much... classier name.
Jigglypuff is like an onomatopoeia. He kind of looks like what he sounds like what he looks like. I mean, he's like, yeah, if I'm going to have a bad name, it might as well look like me. Sound like me. Describe me.
I dance to Jigglypuff's piping is possibly the most euphemistic sentence that has ever been spoken on this podcast.
Even as alliteration in there.
And that is saying something.
I dance to Jigglypuff's piping.
Oh, Heber Pogson enjoyed it.
I bet he did.
Never tell me he didn't revel in those highly articulate evenings of monologue, gasconade, heated yet brotherly argument, lasting on until midnight and after.
This is filthy.
Every bit as much as we did.
So these intellectual conversations, as I put air quotes around them, are just orgies.
Anyhow, at first. Later, he may have had twinges, been sensible of strain. Though never, I still believe, a very severe one. In any case, nature showed herself his friend, his savior, if also, in some sort, his executioner. When the strain tended to become distressing for him personally, very simply and cleverly, she found a way out.
Strain is a woman?
Apparently. So is nature.
That's for, mother, absolutely.
A background of dark legend only brought the steady glow of his and our present felicity into richer relief. We gathered hints of, caught in passing, smiling allusion to, straightened and impecunious?
Ooh, that is a
impecunious.
Word. I'm looking that one up. Can you spell it?
No.
Having little or no money. Impecunious. So an artist.
He was
so
poor.
We're in Rent. Oh my God. We were talking about Rent. These all sound like...
How we gonna pay?
Going back to that first paragraph, how they describe themselves, they sound like the kids from La Boheme.
So this isn't the 80s, this is the 90s.
But
it's Rent and Smash Brothers.
And, like, I think she spent most of her later life in France. So these are probably French, like, you know, like, bohemians. Wow. There we go. Who knew that would be the synchronicity of this episode? Impecunious.
We gathered hints of, caught in passing, smiling allusion to straitened and impecunious early years. He had endured a harsh enough apprenticeship to the profession of letters in its least satisfactory because most ephemeral form, namely journalism and provincial journalism. At that, he was a small town newspaper reporter.
Yeah, or he wrote for the Dear Abby column.
This must have painfully cribbed and confined his free-ranging spirit. We were filled by reverent sympathy for the trials and deprivations of his past. But at the period when the members, numbering a dozen, more or less, of our devoted band trooped up from Chelsea and down from Hampstead Heights to worship in the studio library of the Church Street Kensington House, Pogson was lapped in a material well-being altogether sufficient.
Oh, so he's the poor kid.
He was the poor kid. Now he's the cool kid.
Now he's the cool kid. Doesn't mean he's not still poor.
Yeah.
The rest of these kids sound like they came from, they didn't have to do a stupid apprenticeship. They just got to, go look at art. And this guy is like, he had to do an apprenticeship and, work. But he's so smart. So you can join our club.
He treated us, his youthful friends and disciples, to very excellent food and drink, partaking of these himself, moreover, with evident readiness and relish. Those little help-yourselves stand-up suppers in a big, quiet, comfortably warmed and shaded room revealed in him no ascetic
characterization by or struggling the practice of severe self-discipline and abstention from all forms of indulgence, typically for religious reasons. So the albino from Da Vinci Code.
Right.
Paul Bettany. Maybe not in that role specifically, but it's still Paul Bettany.
Creepy, pasty, super Catholic, self-flagellating Paul Bettany.
There's my recovering Catholic coming out.
Anyway.
He
didn't have that.
He didn't do that to himself because he's not an idiot.
He treated us, his youthful friends and disciples, to very excellent food and drink, partaking of these himself, moreover, with evident readiness and relish. Those little help-yourselves, stand-up suppers in the big, quiet, comfortably warmed and shaded room revealed in him no ascetic tendency, though, I hasten to add, no tendency to unbecoming excess. Such hospitality testified to the soundness of Pogson's existing financial position, as did his repeated assertions that now at last, praise heaven, he had leisure to do worthy and abiding work through which he could freely express his personality, express, in terms of art, his judgments upon and appreciations of the human scene.
All right, so he rose up out of his shitty internship, and now he's not lavish, but he's lavish, but not obscene.
Yeah.
Great. So he's not Gatsby, but he's also not Oliver Twist.
And now he's got enough money to be just generally artistically douchey.
So he's Benny. We'll see.
We listened breathless, nodding exuberant approval. For weren't we ourselves, each and all of us, mightily in love with art and with the human scene? And hadn't we, listening thus breathlessly to our amazing master, the enchanting assurance that we were on the track of a masterpiece? Not impossibly a whole gallery of masterpieces, since Heber Pogson had barely touched middle age yet.
He's their guru. Are they in a cult?
Oh, they are 100% in a cult.
Oh my God. Yes. It's my favorite. Art cult.
For him, there still was time. Fiction, we gathered to be the selected medium. He not only meant to write, but was actually now engaged in writing a novel during those withdrawn and sacred morning hours when we were denied admittance to his presence.
Creepy stalkers.
We previsaged something tremendous, poetic yet fearlessly modern, fixed on the bedrock of realism, a drama and a vision wide, high, deep, spectacular, yet subtle as life itself. Let his confrères, French and Russian, not to mention those merely British-born, look to their laurels when Heber Pogson blossomed into print.
I'm seeing some self-flagellation here. Some commentary, I guess. Yes. I have a feeling this guy's not very good at what he does.
He's
He probably talks a really good game, but he writes at like the level of a fifth grader.
Or he's just not actually writing.
Yeah,
he's just sort of pathological.
Like a cult leader. Like he's not actually doing anything. He's just really good at telling people he's doing things.
I'm a guess. He grew up rich.
Oh. And he has this whole backstory is fake.
He's subsisting off of what is left of his family's money. And he has never done anything.
He has become like he's created this whole bohemian story, but he's nothing. He's just some sad man.
And, preciously inspiring thought, he was our Pogson. He inalienably belonged to us, since hadn't we detected the quality of his genius when the veil was still upon its face? Oh, we knew, bless you, we knew. We'd the right to sniff and snort, noses in air, art contemporary reputations, because we were snugly awaiting the disclosure of a talent which would prick them into nothingness like so many bubbles, pop them like so many inflated paper bags, knock them, one and all, into the proverbial cocked hat.
Cocked hat.
Listen, cockhat.
Listen, you big cockhat. My name's Heber Pogson, and I'm the best writer ever.
Unfortunately, youth with a fine illogic, though having all the time there is before it, easily waxes impatient. In our eagerness for his public recognition, his apotheosis,
the highest point in the development of something, culmination or climax. His appearance at Hamlet was the apotheosis of his career.
In our eagerness for his public recognition, his apotheosis, we did, I am afraid, hustle our great man a little. Instead of being satisfied with his nocturnal
We're getting good words.
coruscations?
We haven't had a lot of good words in a long time.
Good Lord.
Coruscation, glitter or sparkle, a flash of wit.
Instead of being satisfied with his nocturnal coruscations,
Naughty as fuck. His glitter and sparkle in the nocturnals.
his nighttime sparkle,
That's a new word for it if I've ever heard it.
they brilliant as ever, let it be noted, we just a fraction resented the slowness of his progress, began ever so gently to shove that honored, bulky form behind and pull at it in front.
Probably liked that.
I mean,
Coming at him from behind and pulling at his front.
pulling at his bulky front.
Sounds like a good time.
We wanted the tangible result of those many sacred and secret morning hours during which his novel was in process of being formed and fashioned, gloriously built up. Wouldn't he tell us the title, enlighten us as to the theme, the scheme, thus allaying the hunger pangs of our pious curiosity by crumbs, ever so small and few, dropped from his richly furnished table? With exquisite good humor he fenced and feinted. Almost roguishly he would laugh us off and launch the conversation into other channels, holding us, after the first few vexatiously outwitted seconds, at once enthralled and delicately rebuked.
Okay, Harold Hill.
This sounds like how all of Patrick Rothfuss's fans feel.
Who's the fuck is Patrick Rothfuss?
Patrick Rothfuss is a guy who has written a fantasy novel that is by many considered to be the best fantasy novel
Ever written.
Certainly written by a living author. And he wrote it, geez, I don't even remember at this point, but we're looking at it's been 20 years, 15, 20 years, and people are waiting for the next book in the series.
Yeah.
It's the kind of shit that makes George R.R. Martin and his Game of Thrones books look like they're coming out quickly.
Okay. Yeah. Except, have they ever even seen any of his work? He just talks.
No, they have not.
Yeah, but yeah, that's exactly what it sounds like. He's very traveling salesman.
Yeah.
He's giving me Harold Hill vibes here. He shows up to town with this story of making a giant band and the perfect musical adventure, the perfect story, and it's all bullshit.
BT dubs. Patrick, if you're listening, and I know you are.
You're a big fan, I know.
Stop listening and fucking write your book. But at last, in the late spring, as far as I remember, of the second year of our devotion, there came a meeting at which things got pressed somehow to a head. Contrary to custom, feminine influence made itself felt.
Girls rising up!
And here I pause and blush.
Because that's what ladies do.
For it strikes me as so intimately characteristic of our whole relation, in that earlier stage at least, that I should have written all this on the subject of Heber Pogson without making one solitary mention of his wife. She existed.
I wish that was all that we said about her. She existed.
Was permanently in evidences, or wasn't it rather in eclipse, as a shadowy, parasitic entity perambulating the hinterland of his domestic life.
Oh, lovely.
She must have been by some years his junior, a tall, thin, flat-chested woman having heavy yellowish-brown hair, a complexion to match, and pale, nervous eyes. Her clothes hung on her as on a clothes peg. She affected vivid greens, as was the mistaken habit of Victorian ladies possessing the coloring falsely called auburn, but clouded their expressive verdure to neutrality by semi-transparent over-draperies of black.
So we like her?
Our author doesn't.
Yeah. Clearly that was sarcasm.
Yeah. Harry Lessingham, in a crudely unchivalrous mood, once described her as without form and void, adding that she had a mouth like a fish. These statements I considered unduly harsh, yet admitted her almost miraculously negative. She mattered less when one was in the room with her than anything human and feminine which I, so far, had ever run across, and I was at least normally susceptible. I'm very sure of that.
It's so funny because this is a woman writing as a man,
Mm-hmm.
commenting on a woman that probably is a lot like her. I now have a new theory that the wife is the writer.
Yeah?
And this blowhard of her husband is just kind of like,
Stealing all her ideas.
Yeah.
As a matter of course, on our arrival at the blessed house in Church Street, we one and all respectfully greeted her, passed, to put it vulgarly, the time of day with her. But there, intercourse ceased.
Well, that's why they're not very happy.
Yeah. They keep stopping the intercourse.
Their intercourse ceased. I mean, it happens, but, if it's been like 2 years, that's why he can't write his book and you're so pale. I don't know.
I mean, I guess.
Maybe.
Only if you're having sex outside should that really affect your
No, I mean,
skin
like, she
tone.
needs to get some blood flowing. And he's gotten fat, so
Yeah, he's
Jiggly
not working hard enough.
get in there and swallow her up, baby. Get in there, jiggly poof.
Sounds like he could.
Yes.
At some subsequent instant, she faded out, whether into space or into some adjacent connubial chamber.
Of or relating to the married state.
Oh, their bedroom.
Yeah. So exactly what we were talking about.
Yep. At some subsequent instant, she faded out, whether into space or into some adjacent connubial chamber. I had no notion. I only realized when the act was accomplished that we now were without her, that she had vanished, leaving behind her no faintest moral or emotional trace. But on the occasion in question, she did not vanish. We fed her at supper, and still she remained, in the interests of social propriety, as we imagined, since for once the Pogson Symposium included a stranger, an eminently attractive lady guest.
Uh-oh, they're in a throuple. Or that's her girlfriend.
Or someone else had, brought someone. Anyway.
Harry Lessingham. Hi.
Harry Lessingham had begged to bring his sister with him. He told me of this beforehand, and I rejoiced. Lessingham had long been dear to me as a brother, while that Arabella should only be dear to me as a sister was just then, I own, among the things I wished least. I craved, therefore, to have her share our happy worship. She was a pretty turn for literature herself. I coveted to see her dazzled, exalted, impressed. It would be a fascinating spectacle. Before I slept that night, or rather next morning, I recognized her coming as a disastrous mistake.
It's never wrong for her to come.
Truth.
If it's consensual and, it's all things. Yeah. Not a disastrous mistake.
For she had received insufficient instruction in ritual in the suitable forms of approach to so august a presence as that of our host. She played round him, flickering, darting like lightning round a cathedral tower, metal-tipped. Where we, in our young male modesty, had but gently drawn or furtively shoved, she tickled the soft, sedentary creature's ribs as with a rapier point.
Uh-huh.
Rapier? I hardly know. Oh, wait.
Oh, no. No. She's like up there, like skipping around him and tickling him and making him go all jiggly poofy. Is this creative inspiration here?
Or is she calling him on his shit?
We shall find out.
And to us agitated watchers, the amazing thing was that Pogson didn't seem to mind.
Yeah, I'm sure he hated this young girl coming up and tickling him. It just sounds like every man's, or, oh my God, how dare you?
He neither rebuked her nor laughed her off, but purred, veritably purred under her alternate teasing and petting like some big, sleek cat.
Meow.
At last, with a cajoling but really alarming audacity, she went for him straight.
Oh, damn. Isn't his wife still in the room?
Yes.
That's why she stayed. She's like, who the fuck is this girl?
Of course, dear Mr. Pogson, Harry has told me all about your wonderful novel, she said. I am so interested, so thrilled, and so grateful to you for letting me join your audience tonight, but I want quite frightfully to know more. Speaking not only for myself, but for all who are present, may I implore a further revelation. Pray, don't send us empty away in respect of the wonderful book. It would be so lovely while we sit here at your feet. She, in fact, sat by his side, her chair placed decidedly close to his. If you would read us a chapter is impossible.
Love her.
Her charming, pliant mouth, her charming, dancing eyes, her caressing voice, I won't swear ever her caressing hands didn't for a brief space take part, all wooed him to surrender.
We ladies know what's up. We know how to get something out of a guy. These guys have been coming here for 2 years listening to him be like, blah, blah, blah. This girl comes in, she's like, she just touches his forearm and it's like, can you tell me about your book? He's like, okay. Oh.
I mean, it'd work on me.
There was a comedian recently I was watching on one of the, some sort of reel came up and she was like, you know what? It's true. Men are simple. And she turned to like the 3 men in the front row and she's like, are you mad if I say you're simple? And they're like, no. And they're like, right? Men want women to know that, so they'll stop fucking trying to make them change. Men are simple. Doesn't mean they're stupid. They're simple.
Easy to understand.
Yes, and this girl
is what it comes down to.
This girl understands. She's like, I know how to figure out what the fuck's going on behind the scenes. I'm just going to pay him a little attention.
Well, a page then? A paragraph? Oh, don't be so obdurate. The merest sentence? Surely we may claim as much as that. Picture our pride, our happiness. She enclosed us all in a circular and sympathetic glance, which ended as it had started by meeting his mild eyes, lingering appealingly upon his large, pink countenance. Pogson...
Is that a comment about his penis?
Yes, his large, pink countenance.
I mean, she's been touching on him and all this stuff.
It is probably larger and pinker
his
now. His
jiggly poof is poofed. He's all poofed up.
He's ready to pipe. Pogson succumbed. No, he wouldn't read, but since she so amiably desired it, more than anything in all my life, with the most convincing and virginal sincerity.
Told you, lusty month of May.
He thought he might rehearse a passage which wasn't, as he gladly believed, altogether devoid of merit. He did rehearse it. And we broke into applause, the more tempestuous because suspicion of a chill queerly lay upon us, a chill insidious as it was vague, disturbing as it was, wasn't it? We silently, quite violently hoped so, ridiculously uncalled for. After all, that passage is thundering good, you know, Harry Lessingham announced, as though arguing himself out of that same insidious chill an hour later. Arabella had refused a hansom, declaring herself excited, still under the spell, and so wanting to walk. Leaving the Church Street house, the three of us crossed into Campden Grove with a view to turning down Campden House Road, thus reaching Kensington High Street. It was out of sight of the average, packed with epigram, worthy of all we've ever believed or asked of him. It took a master of technique, of style, to write like that. Beloved brother, which of us ever said it didn't? Arabella took him up sweetly. Slender, light-footed, the train of her evening gown switched over her arm. Beneath her flowing orange and white-flowered satin cloak, she walked between us. Why, it was good to the point of being inevitable. One seemed, I certainly did, to know every phrase, every word which was coming. None could have been other or been placed otherwise than it was. And that's the highest praise one can give to anybody's prose, isn't it? One jumped to the perfect rightness of the whole, a rightness so perfect as to make the sentences sound quite extraordinarily familiar.
Whoa.
This last assertion dropped as a bomb between Lessingham and myself. By the way, the girl presently said as our awkward silence continued, has either of you happened to read or reread Meredith's Egoist just lately? Lessingham stopped short, and in the light of the neighboring gas lamp, I saw his handsome, boyish face look troubled to the point of physical pain. What on earth are you driving at? What do you mean, Arabella, that Pogson is a plagiarist? Don't eat me, Harry dearest, if I incline to use a shorter, commoner expression.
Don't eat me? I mean, that is your brother.
It's her brother. Now, maybe if you, Mr. Narrator, want to eat me.
I think Mr. Narrator does.
Absolutely.
Mrs. Narrator. Yeah.
Don't eat me, Harry dearest, if I incline to use a shorter, commoner expression. A thief. An unconscious one, no doubt, she threw off quickly, fearful of explosions, possibly, in her turn. He may have been betrayed by his own extraordinary memory. But this is horrible. Horrible, Lessingham cried. All the names, though, were different. Arabella appeared to have overcome her fear of explosions. Her charming eyes again danced. Exactly, she said. That was the peculiar part of it, the thing which riveted my attention. The names of the characters and places were different, were altered, changed.
He did it on purpose.
Lessingham stood, bareheaded, in the light of a gas lamp. He ran the fingers of his left hand through his crisp, fair hair, rumpling it up into a distracted crest. I could almost hear the travail of his honest soul. Loyalty, faith, and honor worked at high pressure to hit on a satisfactory explanation. Suddenly, he threw back his head and laughed. Why, of course, he cried. It's as clear as mud. Pogson wasn't betrayed by anything. He did it on purpose. Don't you understand, you dear goose? You very much too clever by half, dear goose. It was simply his kindly joke, his good-natured little game, and we, like a pack of idiots, which compared with him we are, never scented it. You pestered, yes, Arabella, most unconscionably pestered him to read an excerpt from his novel, and to pacify you, he quoted a page from Meredith instead.
Mm-hmm. This is what happens when the cult leader starts to get exposed. You start to make excuses for them and yada, yada.
When it becomes this hard to come up with a logical explanation for the truth in quotey fingers, well, you all know that it's a lie.
Yep.
That the truth usually has a simple explanation, and the lie usually requires a whole lot of extra
layers.
juggling.
There's nothing happening in the world right now that sounds like that at all.
Harry Lessingham tucked his hand under the folds of the orange and white flowered cloak, and taking the girl affectionately by the elbow, trotted her down the sloping pavement towards Kensington High Street. All the honors of war rest with Pogson, he joyfully assured her. You made an impertinent demand for bread. He didn't mean to be drawn, but was too civil, too tender-hearted to put you off with a stone, so slyly cut you a slice from another man's loaf. Does it occur to you, my sweet sister, you've been had? Very neatly had.
Oh, honey, you have no idea. She knows exactly what's going on.
If it comes to that, Miss Lessingham by no means stands alone, I interrupted. We've all been had, as you so gracefully put it, very neatly and very extensively had.
All right, the narrator's figured it out now, too.
For though I trusted Lessingham's view was the correct one, trusted so most devoutly, I could not but regret the discomfiture of Arabella. Her approach to our chosen idol may have slightly lacked in reverence. She may indeed, in plain English, have cheeked him. But she had done so in the prettiest, airiest manner. Pogson's punishment for her indiscretion, if highly ingenious, still struck me as not in the best taste. For was it not at once rather mean and rather cheap to make so charming a person the subject, and that before witnesses, of a practical joke?
This poor innocent girl.
If, after all, it really was a joke. That insidious, odious chill which earlier prompted my tempestuous applause as I woefully registered hung about me yet. Unquestionably, Arabella Lessingham's visit to Church Street showed more and more when I considered it as a radical mistake. From it, I date the waning of the moon of my delight in respect of both Pogson and herself. I had bowed in worship equally sincere, though diverse in sentiment, before each, and to each had pledged my allegiance. To have them thus discredit one another represented the most trying turn of events.
That your whole life is full of shit.
That worshiping a person is usually not worth it.
Not smart. Yeah. That being too obsessed with something or someone or whatever.
No matter what the form of that obsession
whether
takes.
It's a god, a person, or a thing, being blindly loyal and obsessed with that probably means you're not seeing the whole picture.
For a full month, I cold-shouldered the band, abjured the shrine, and avoided the lady. Then, while still morose and brooding, my trouble at its height, a cousin in the third degree, rich, middle-aged, and conveniently restless, invited me to be his traveling companion. We had taken trips together before. This one promised fields of wider adventure, nothing less than the quartering of southern Europe along with nibblings at Africa and Asiatic Mediterranean coasts. It was the chance of a lifetime. I embraced it. I also called at the house in Church Street to make my farewells. I could do no less. I have used the word resigned in describing Pogson. Today, that word notably covered him. Our friend appeared depressed, yet bland in his depression, anxious to mollify and placate rather than reproach. His attitude touched me. I hardly deserved it after my neglect, to which, by the way, he made no smallest reference. But as I unfolded my plans, he increasingly threw off his depression and generously entered into them, would have me fetch an atlas and trace out my proposed itinerary upon the map. It included names to conjure with. These set wide the floodgates of his speech. He at once enchanted and confounded me by his knowledge of the literature, art, history of Syria, Egypt, Italy, Greece, and the Levant. For the next 3/4 of an hour, I had Pogson at his best, and oh, how vastly good that same best was. Under the flashing, multicolored light of it, he routed my suspicions, put my annoyance and distrust to flight. As he leaned back in the roomy library chair filled to veritable overflowing by his big, squashy, brown velvet jacketed person, Pogson had put on flesh of late, put it on sensibly, as I remarked even during the last few weeks of my absence, he reconquered all my admiration and belief. As I rose to depart, "Ah, you fortunate youth," he thus genially addressed me. "Thrice fortunate youth in your freedom, your enterprise, your happy elasticity of flesh and spirit. What won't you have to tell me of things actually seen, of lands, cities, civilizations past and present, and the storied wonder of them when you come back? And what won't you have to read to me in return, dear master?" I echoed, eager to testify to my recovered faith. "By then, the book will be finished on which all our hopes and affections are set. 10 times more precious, more illuminating than anything I have seen will be what I hear from you when I come back." But as I spoke, surely I wasn't mistaken in thinking that for an agitating minute the pinkness of Pogson's large countenance sickly ebbed and blanched. And while my attention was still engaged by this disquieting phenomenon, I became aware that Mrs. Pogson had joined us. Silently, mysteriously, she faded, the term holds good, into evidence. As on so many former occasions, she had silently, mysteriously faded out. Dressed in one of those verdant gowns, so dolorously veiled in semi-transparent black, she stood behind her husband's chair. Her eyes met mine. They were no longer nervous or in expression vague, but oddly aggressive, challenging, defiantly alight.
Ooh.
"Oh, yes," she declared. "By then, Heber will have completed his great novel, without doubt." When uttering his name, she laid a thin, long-fingered hand upon his rounded shoulder, and to my little short of stupefaction, I saw Pogson's fat pink hand move up to seek and clasp it. On me, this action, hers soothing, protective, his appealing, welcoming, produced the most bewildering effect. I felt embarrassed and abashed. an indecently impertinent intruder upon the secret places of two human hearts. That any such intimate and tender correspondence existed between this so strangely ill-assorted couple, I never dreamed. I uttered what must have sounded wildly incoherent farewells and fled. Of the ensuing 18 months of foreign travel, it is irrelevant here to speak. Suffice it that on my return to England and to Chelsea, the earliest news which greeted me was that Arabella Lessingham had been now 5 weeks married, and Heber Pogson a fortnight dead.
Oh, shit.
Lessingham, dear good fellow, was my informant and minded acquainting me, so I fancied only a degree less with the first item than with the second.
Whew.
For some considerable time, he told me Pogson had been ailing. He grew inordinately stout, unwieldy, to the extent of all exertion, all movement causing him distress. Suffocation threatened if he attempted to lie down, so that latterly he spent not only all day but all night sitting in the big library chair we knew so well.
So he is Jigglypuff.
If not actually in pain, he must still have suffered intolerable discomfort. But he never complained, and to the last his passion for books never failed. We took him any new ones we happened to run across, as you'd take a sick woman flowers. To the end, he read. And wrote? I asked. That I can't say, Lessingham replied. There were things I could not make out, and I couldn't question him. It didn't seem to be my place, though I had an idea he'd something on his mind to speak of which would be a relief. It worried me badly. I felt sure he wanted to tell us, but couldn't bring himself to the point. He talked of you. He cared for you more than for any of us, yet I may be all wrong. It seemed to me he was glad you weren't here. Once or twice I thought he felt almost afraid you might come back before it was all over, you know. It sounds rather horrible, but I had a feeling he longed to slink off quietly out of sight, for he did not dread death, I'm certain of that. What he dreaded was that life had some trick up her sleeve, which if he delayed too long might give him away, put him to shame somehow at the last. And Mrs. Pogson? Lessingham looked at me absently. Oh, Mrs. Pogson? She never interested me. She's too invertebrate. But I believe she took care of Pogson all right.
Oh, yep. Ignore the woman.
Next day, I called at the house in Church Street. After some parley, I was admitted into the studio library. Neither in Mrs. Pogson nor in the familiar room did I find any alteration, save that the green had disappeared from her dress. She wore hanging, trailing, unrelieved black, and that a piece of red woolen cord was tied across from arm to arm of Pogson's large library chair, forbidding occupation of it. This pleased me. It struck the positive, the, in a way, aggressive note which Mrs. Pogson had once before so strangely, unexpectedly sounded in my presence. I said the things common to such occasions as that of our present meeting, said them with more than merely conventional feeling and emphasis. I praised her husband's great gifts, his amazing learning, his eloquence, his magnetic charm by which he captivated and held us. Finally, I dared the question I had come here to ask, which had burned upon my tongue, indeed, from the moment I heard of Pogson's death. What about the novel? Might we hope for speedy, though posthumous, publication? We were greedy, The world should know how great a literary genius it had lost. Was it ready for press, as, did she remember, she'd assured me it would certainly be by the time I came back? Mrs. Pogson did not betray any sign of emotion. Her thin hands remained perfectly still in her crepe-covered lap. There is no novel, she calmly told me. There never has been any novel. Heber did not finish it because he never began it. He did not possess the creative faculty. You were not content with what he gave. You asked of him that which he could not give. At first, he played with you. It amused him. You were so gullible, so absurdly ignorant. Then he hesitated to undeceive you. In that, I admit, he was weak. But he suffered for his weakness. It made him unhappy. Oh, how I have hated, how I still hate you, for I saved him from poverty, from hard work. I secured him a peaceful, beautiful life, till you came and spoiled it. All the money was mine, she said. The end.
Ew. So we were right.
Kinda.
We were right that he'd never been anywhere. He was poor. Like, he really had never done anything.
Yeah.
He was just poor guy that, liked reading, and so he told stories like he'd done them and, lived vicariously through others, married up,
Mm-hmm.
and then this group of boys started, worshiping him, but he wasn't actually good at anything.
Well, the things he was good at were not the things that they wanted him to be good at.
No.
Was the issue.
He
It's not
loved
that he was
reading.
good at nothing. He was clearly well-educated and smart and charming and great in conversation.
Yeah.
But
He would probably have been a really good
teacher?
Yes, and that's I was about to say not to diss teachers, because really good teachers, that's exactly what they are. They're just so good at so many things, and they're so charming and can convey ideas in an inspiring way.
Yeah.
Even if that's not something they ever even studied, as something they never practically did.
Sounds like he would have been a brilliant, literature or history professor.
Yeah.
But they wanted him to be an artist.
They wanted him to be an artist, like they so desperately wanted to be themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But he was too embarrassed to tell them.
That one was sad.
It was kind of sad. He also was kind of a cult leader, because, he could have just told them.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is it's not like they thought he was God and he had to say, I'm not God. It's just they thought he was a brilliant artist, which in a way some people think of as a god, but just tell them I'm not a writer. Where'd they get that idea in the first place, that he was a writer? Someone had to bring it up. And he had to say, yeah.
Well, so what it sounds like to me here, the version of it that I'm taking from it,
Mm-hmm.
and why for me it feels so sad,
Mm-hmm.
and why I so feel for Pogson
Mm-hmm.
here, is because it sounds like he's a guy who spent most of his life living in books.
Yes.
And
To
he
escape.
found a woman who loved him very much, and they married, and the two of them had a happy life together,
Mm-hmm.
it seems. And good for him, because she was able to take care of him. And he probably, clearly he gave her something that she wanted, because she married him and took care of him. And then he met this group of cool young people who suddenly wanted to be his friends. And he told them interesting stories that were regurgitated, kind of garbled versions of
Mm-hmm.
things that he had read before. And they urged him to write something. And so he started telling more stories, probably from more obscure sources. And they thought he was writing. And he was afraid that if he admitted that he was just regurgitating stories, his friends would leave.
Which is exactly what happened.
Which is what
Because
happened in the end.
when Arabella got him to read from his book, she recognized it, and then he kind of like almost like died of a broken heart, I guess. Because his favorite student called him out. But I mean, again, there's two sides to that story. Like, all he had to do was tell the truth.
All he had to do was tell the truth, but he was afraid that the truth would cost him his friends.
But the truth did cost him his friends. Like, his friend left. Like, one of his
friends left.
His favorite got up and left because he was like, I'm kind of over it. Because he got exposed. He was just living in a very, very thick lie. Which is how cults start.
Yeah.
He didn't seem to have ill intent.
No.
Like, it's not like, he wasn't going to be like, no, I'm going to brand you and give me all your money. No, it wasn't that kind of thing. But like, it's sad, but it's also not, there's no like bad guy or good guy in this.
No.
It's kind of
and that's not what I mean. I just I can recognize that there are times when a person finds themselves in a position where hanging on to the version of reality that you're hanging on to is eating you up, but you're afraid that telling the truth is going to be worse. And that seems to be where he is, where it's eating him up that he's lying to these people in his life, but he's afraid that if he tells them the truth, they're all just going to leave and he's not going to have anyone.
Have his wife.
He'd have his wife.
Who clearly loved him. So, I don't know.
But he's got friends for possibly the first time ever.
Yeah.
People who respect him, people who look up to him.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm torn on that one, but I did like, even though it was hard to read, it was very beautiful and very, I had very clear images of everyone, including Jigglypuff. I think it's kind of funny, not funny, that he died from like over engorged. Like, it sounds like he had like gout or like he'd eaten himself like to death or something.
He consumed too much and moved not enough, and
so
all he wanted to do was sit around and read. And
Jigglypuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, alas. Thank you to our newest writer, Lucas Malet.
Yeah.
Or Mary St. Ledger Kingsley.
So, hey, listeners, what did you think of that story? Did you, how did it hit you? Clearly it hit Heather and I in very different ways, and I'm genuinely very curious what your take is. So please do reach out. We take text messages and phone calls if you already have those numbers, but not going to give them out here because, Podstalker is only funny for so long. You can email us at 5050artsproduction@gmail.com or message us on any of the social media by looking for Campfire Classics Podcast. And let us know, really, how this one hit you. What did you take from it? What were your feelings about this dude and his decision making? And when you message us, please do include this week's secret passcode, which is Jigglypoof's Piping.
Jigglypoof's Piping.
Yeah, that's all I got. I'm kind of tired after that one.
Yeah,
anything from you?
No, I'm good. I'm great.
Well, then, until next week, this has been Campfire Classics, where we try to read those books that look really good on your shelf.
Good night, you will sleep tight.